Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. How's it going? I hope you're doing really well. First of all, hello. I feel slightly like I'm a dog like returning with her tail between her legs, having just eaten the toilet roll. I'm very acutely aware of just how long it's been since I uploaded a video, and I can only apologize for that. Consider this me eating the toilet roll and feeling very guilty about it. I'm doing quite a terrible job of keeping my head above water at the moment, but we're getting there. This surely counts as progress. Now that I'm sitting humbly with little pieces of toilet roll all in my beard and my whiskers. Let's move on. I hope you are doing really well. I hope you had an amazing summer so far. If you are in the UK right now, all I can say is may your fan be powerful, may your coffee be iced, and let me know some good news. Let me know something lovely that I've missed while I've been away. Let me know what you've been up to. Let me know some nice things that have happened to you. I would love to hear about them. If I have managed to be a productive human being, all being well, this video is going up on Sunday the 2nd of July, which just so happens, I'm not saying I'm some kind of organisational queen, but that just so happens to be exactly the midway point of the year. So to mark that occasion, I thought we would have a nice, chilled, cozy, quiet little catch up, all about what I would say have been my favourite books of this year so far. Kind of like a little midway check-in to see how we're all getting on. What we have been reading that's been great, nice positive vibes. So if you want to keep up with my reading recommendations a bit more often than me sporadically popping up in your subscription box, don't forget you can follow me on Goodreads, on Storygraph, and on my Instagram, which I guess is probably where I share the most like up-to-date version of what I'm currently reading. Okay, enough rambling, let's get into this. These are my favourite books that I have read in 2023, open brackets, so far. Close brackets. I have a little stack here, so you might be able to spot a couple of them already. Weirdly, this is a really weird thing. When I was pulling them all off the bookshelf behind me to show you today, 4 of these 6 titles that I'm going to talk about today, 4 of them have yellow covers. How's about that? Number 1, I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. No, your time machine does not work. We are not back in 2022. Honestly, if you needed any proof that I am a painfully slow reader and that I'm always approximately 6 months, if not further, behind all the booktubers and the titles that you're supposed to be currently reading to have your finger on the pulse, I think this is all the proof we needed of that. I don't know how people do it though, because I just always have a constant stack to work my way through. So the current title just moves its way down to the stack. And then before I know it, I'm a year behind everybody else. I gave this 5 stars. I did a brief review of this way back in January, actually, when I did like my book haul to kick the year off. So I won't talk too much about this again today. Let's just consider this your little reminder that if you haven't reached for this one yet, it is one that I can't recommend enough. Jeanette McCurdy's an actress. She's mainly known for some like really popular Nickelodeon shows back in the like 2010s kind of era. I wasn't really familiar with her. It was a little bit after my time. Not to sound like a 90-year-old woman. This is her story of growing up as a child star, and how she lived with a mother who controlled every single aspect of her life as a baby, through to a child, through to a teenager, through to a young adult, to ensure that her daughter became a Hollywood star, no matter what. You might be a bit like me and think, I'm not really a memoir kind of girl. I actually don't know if I've ever even read one before. There's never been one that I have been interested enough to pick up, I don't think. But the way that everybody raves about this, I couldn't help but be intrigued, and I couldn't put it down. There's a reason that everybody says it's amazing. That whole world of child stardom is just a topic that is really fascinatingly sinister to me. There always seems to be this whole like unspoken darkness to it. And I think this is quite a groundbreaking book in really exposing that. And Jeanette's real like generosity and sharing the full extent and her honesty about it all just sums up exactly why we're all so strangely fascinated by that world, and why we all love kind of peeking through that smeared dirty window and trying to figure out what's really going on back there. The thing that makes it kind of so compelling, I think, is that there's this really great, like very dark biting sense of humour that everything is kind of laced with, that stops it feeling like a really heavy, miserable read. That humour turns it into something that is so full of empathy, like empathy for her younger self. And of course, it's all balanced really well with very important sensitivity, which I think is something we can all learn from. So if you are in a good place where you feel like you can read something like this, I highly recommend it. Psych yourself up and get stuck in. I've got nothing but respect for this woman, and I think she's a great writer. Okay, number 2, plus added cattail in the picture now, and also some very soapy coffee. This is going so well. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming down tonight. It is an absolute pleasure to see you all in your finery. Okay, number 2. I've just realised, actually, this is a cheery bunch, isn't it? God, am I all right? Any more death-related titles that I would like to throw in the mix today? This is The Virgin Suicides. Nothing says cheery YouTube video like this one. Fun fact number 1 is that the majority of these covers are yellow. The other fun fact is that this is the first of 2 books which I actually spontaneously picked up in a charity shop for £2. 2 of those have found their way into my favourite reads of the year so far, so it just goes to show you. Anyone who would have labelled themselves as a chronically emo teenager in 2005 and would now label themselves as a 32-year-old teenage girl will understand when I say that this film was a very big part of my life in 2005, and 2023 seemed as good a time as any to reignite my love for Kirsten Dunst and Josh Hartnett. I think maybe I am taking it for granted slightly that this was very formative for everybody's teenage years. If you're not familiar with this, it is set in the 1970s, and the 5 Lisbon sisters have always been a little bit of an enigma amongst the local community. But as an ambulance arrives for Mary Lisbon, the final suicide amongst the Lisbon girls after all 5 of them take their own lives, a group of neighbourhood boys who've been watching the whole thing unfold recall the events of the last 13 months of that happening and their ongoing obsession and love for the girls and their very mysterious lives, even 20 years later, which is the perspective of when this book is actually told from. But it's the writing of this book which landed it in this pile. It has really stuck with me as some of the most beautiful prose that I have ever enjoyed. It is absolutely stunning. It feels genuinely haunting. The atmosphere is like palpable. You get really sucked into it. I found literally from the beginning to the end that there were so many really poignant moments and even like specific sentences in this book that would have me catching my breath. And it's not beautiful writing that feels inaccessible. It's just writing that you can't help but admire and appreciate. It doesn't make it feel like a dense, heavy book. It just adds to everything feeling kind of ethereal and a little claustrophobic and cloying. It's quite a dreamlike story. Obviously, it's a look back at very nostalgic teenage years, and the writing mirrors that feeling. There's such a darkness to it, and there's so many references. This is like real GCSE English vibes right now. There's so many references to everything, like the whole setting being really like dusty and grubby and sticky and hot, and everything's covered in bugs and things are rotting. You really feel this sense of like decaying summer to it. This would actually be a great like late summer read. And I think the thing that is so very clever about this book, it takes a moment to kind of wrap your head around it a little bit, and I didn't really have that realization until I was kind of a good chunk of the way through, because it feels quite uncomfortable, a lot of the descriptions about the girls, and I don't know, there's a real kind of like quite like icky feeling to a lot of it. But the framing of the story of the Lisbon girls and what unfolds for them, framing that through the male gaze of a group of obsessive teenage boys who are watching the whole thing happen. It's such an unconventional but an absolutely immaculate choice for the vibes that this book puts across. They never really know what's going on in the girls' minds, and because of that we never actually even hear from the girls themselves, despite this being their story. It's basically just what the boys are projecting onto them of what they want them to be, what they dream of them being, and then that is kind of made even quite sinister by the fact that it's now being reminisced about by grown men who clearly haven't really like let go of this obsession that they had with the 5 teenage girls. This is one of those books that if you leave it lying around, people will ask if you're okay. And by the end, the answer is probably not. You will need to touch some grass after reading. After those two slightly heavy hitters, this one is slightly more positive, I guess. Except not really, actually, because this will also cause you severe emotional distress. Have you really loved a book if it doesn't have you reeling and wondering if you'll ever recover from it? So this is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, another huge title from last year, which I didn't get around to until this year. The reason I put it off though was because I'd heard it was all about video games, and I just kind of assumed that the gaming part of the story was going to go completely over my head. The extent of my gamer girl existence is Mary-Kate and Ashley's Magical Mystery Mall. Despite that, despite my total lack of video game knowledge or interest, I absolutely loved this book. I actually found it all incredibly interesting and really like creatively inspiring, which really surprised me. So the premise of this one, a little overview if you haven't read it. 2 kids meet in a hospital room in 1987 and they very quickly bond over their shared obsession for video games. Both of them completely live and breathe video games. And then as fate would have it, when they're a little bit older, 8 years later, their eyes meet across a train station and suddenly they are back in each other's lives. The spark between them is immediate as it was when they were kids. They are suddenly kind of catapulted back towards each other. Hello, Flo. And they decide to work together on doing what they love, which is creating their own video games together. But more than that, they both discover this kind of intimacy in digital worlds that they create together, which eludes them both for different reasons in their real lives. I think more than anything, if you love a book that is about character relationships, if you love the experience of falling in love with characters who feel so real, this is the book for you. And there's actually another book in this pile which I think is quite similar in this way. It's addressing that kind of like development of really long-term friendship, those friendships that you have throughout your entire life, and the changes and reinvention that you go through separately and together when you stay in each other's lives that way. I loved how this one was really all about the idea of like lifelong friendship not being the romantic thing that everyone might think of it as being. Certainly not always perfect. Both sides always have to be open to the idea of like second chances and forgiveness and seeing the other person change and how willing you are to stay by their side. And the way these friendships and relationships are looked at, the 3 main characters, Sam, Sadie, and Marks, they felt so painfully real to me. I had a little cry, which I think tells you everything you need to know. And I was full of that like real wonderful heartache when you lose characters who you've kind of formed a real bond with as you've been reading. And as well as the characters, the other really cool part about this book is there's this amazing creativity for the story structure as well. You never really know what's going to be coming from the next chapter. It's a really unique book, and it actually has the kind of sense of a video game in that it almost feels like different chapters are kind of different types of levels or different types of visuals or graphics. I don't know, it like the way that you can play a game and it can really switch up on you. Oh my god, Marx's chapters, if you read this, you'll know exactly the bits that I'm talking about. Marx's chapters particularly left me absolutely reeling. They hit really hard. And this author, not only did they create an amazing novel, completely original, really cool concept, they also designed a ton of video game concepts within the book as well that I actually really want to play. Actually, that is probably the only problem with Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, is that I want to play all of the games that Unfair made together. Alas. The cruelty of books. I am excited to tell you about this one. Is this maybe my top recommendation of this entire pile? It actually might be. It feels like a long time ago that I read this now, but thinking about my reading experience of this, it was absolutely amazing. This is a 5-star absolute feat of masterpiece territory. Not to get all dramatic on you. So this is Clytemnestra. Look at that cover. Absolutely stunning. Actually, this was an advanced copy, so I don't know whether this is the legit cover. If you love a mythology retelling and you haven't read this one yet, please do yourself a favour. I don't want to guarantee that you'll love it because we all know that reading is very subjective, but I kind of do guarantee it. I don't want to, you know, sound like the ultimate dodgy wheeler dealer, but I do kind of guarantee it. But you know what, darling? I do kind of guarantee that you will love this book. So I'm the kind of girl, at the best of times, if you put a Greek mythology retelling of a wronged, powerful woman who is hell-bent on revenge, if you put that into my hands, I'm gonna have a good time. I'm gonna eat it up. I'm gonna absolutely not leave a scrap, and it's gonna be a solid 5 stars from me. I love to see it. Circe, in particular, holds a very special place in my heart, but Clytemnestra, I think I'm saying that right, but Clytemnestra is now right there with her. I love this so much. Sometimes a book lands 5 stars from me because it's an absolute feat of writing. It's like a magnum opus. It's like I can't believe someone's brain can create this. I think this is one of those, but I also just bloody loved the story as well. So maybe a little bit of both, I guess. And I guess for a little bit of extra context as well, which might grab your attention if you're kind of vaguely interested in this, her story is also kind of set against the backdrop of the lead up to the Trojan War. Not only is this some amazing storytelling, some beautiful writing, some killer characters, this is so impressive, mainly just in its incredibly vast knowledge. It's a really satisfying, very fulfilling read, just for kind of like the inclusion of the sheer amount of really kind of recognizable events and characters. Like, it's so impressive. It feels as though this author's knowledge is just an endless fountain. I think when it comes to these mythology retellings, that writing has got to be stunning for it to work. To really capture that mythology vibe, the writing has got to be absolutely, and this is absolutely beautiful. It is so gripping, and it is laced with that really kind of addictive, lyrical, like at times even feels quite like poetic, rhythmic style, which is so needed with these mythology retellings to really kind of properly hook you. She's the epitome of that really inspiring inner strength, which is also very flawed at the same time, because all of her decisions and reactions and actions come from that very powerful place, which is a combination of love and rage. Both those things lead to interesting decisions when combined together. And because of that, she is an absolute badass from start to finish, particularly when she becomes a mother later down the line. Things really kick up a gear when she's got that like protective lioness quality added into her already very fierce personality. Don't want to give any spoilers because I really encourage you to read this one, but you will feel her rage coming through the pages. It is palpable. You'll feel so much empathy for her. I just love having a lead female character that I'm absolutely rooting for from the very first page. It's just a total feminist masterpiece. It completely blew me away. I thought it was going to be kind of, you know, I always really enjoy them, but if you enjoy a mythology retelling, I implore you to give this a try. It's the best of the best in that category, in my opinion. And I think that's all I've got to say about this one, other than Agamemnon sucks, Clytemnestra rules forever. If destroyed, still true. I feel like I look quite frazzled. I can only apologise. I get very carried away when I'm talking about these things. Got an absolute Goliath next up. It's Yellowface, which I'm sure you've seen on every single bookshop table this side of the sun for the past few weeks. There is a bookmark in here still, by the way, because Adam is currently reading this now because I enjoyed it so much. I think he wanted to see what all the fuss was about. If you watched my best books of 2022 video, spoiler alert, the number one top spot went to Babel by Rf Quang. That was my favourite book that I read last year. It's one of my favourite books I've ever read, I think. So as soon as this was announced, as soon as it was revealed that this was coming out next, I was absolutely hyped to read it. So much so, in fact, that I took myself on a little solo date. I booked myself a little solo ticket to go and watch Rebecca, the author, speaking at a Waterstones event and to get my copy signed by her. Look at that, there you go. I also got Babel signed, very exciting. I got this very cool sprayed edge edition. It was an amazing evening. I think she's probably the most intelligent person I've ever heard speak in my life, and it made me realise that my brain might as well be a pile of crackers in comparison. Anyway, Yellowface is what she describes as her Goblin era book, which I think is hilarious. Dark satire, dark humour, really getting to the very kind of nitty-gritty of a story, confronting some pretty nasty stuff, and basically causing mild chaos in its wake. Basically a critique of the publishing world as it stands in the modern day. But even if you think you have absolutely no interest in the publishing world whatsoever, if that sounds like something that is not up your street, this is such a good story. So this one is told from the perspective of the main character, June, but it's the story of two authors, really. June is a struggling author. She's a white woman, while her Chinese-American friend, Athena, is a hugely successful author. She is like the dream, and her life is basically everything that June has ever dreamed of and has been unable to achieve, which obviously adds a very strange dynamic to their friendship. But then, this is not a spoiler alert, this is literally like the first thing that happens in the book. Athena dies in a freak accident, and June is there in that moment. And when she dies, June spontaneously decides to steal Athena's latest manuscript, which nobody else has seen yet. This manuscript that she's left behind is a World War I historical novel about Chinese labourers. She sees her moment, she takes it for herself, she reworks it a little bit, and then she publishes it under the very ambiguous kind of pen name, I guess, of Juniper Song. And the book is an enormous hit. It's everything that June has ever dreamed of achieving. But then whispers start to surface online. And the story that unfolds is how June is basically haunted by her decision to steal this story from Athena. It's giving Lady Macbeth, and it's all about how she continues to justify her decision to do what she did. This is a page turner. This is the meaning of page turner in my view. This is a devour in one sitting kind of book. I don't know what she put in this book, but it is absolutely addictive and captivating. It's like witnessing a fictional car crash in that you just cannot look away from the horrors that are unfolding. Kind of like a very vivid, very real feeling fictional version of when a really big drama kicks off online and you find yourself kind of like constantly refreshing like a little troll to see what happens next and who's going to speak out next and who's going to get cancelled next. This is the book version of that exact like sick, addicted, kind of twisted feeling. Of course, probably more importantly, I guess, it's commentary on the very interesting, very hotly debated idea of who is the right person to tell a story. The word authenticity and how that is such a keystone these days and what it even really means. The nature of the beast of publishing, whether the whole industry is rigged, who it really favours, the bias that exists there, the manipulation in the name of profit, the way that this like super realistic, very contemporary, quite easy read has flashes of what is basically horror fiction, real kind of very quick flashes of proper horror. They're quite rare moments and they're interspersed very unexpectedly, as I said, but there's some really creepy bits. There's a bit about where she says that she wants to like peel off her skin and step into it or something. Honestly, I think I've probably made it clear several times that I would literally read this woman's scribblings on the back of a crisp packet and give it 5 stars. But this is in fact a bit better than scribblings on the back of a crisp packet, and it feels like a huge kind of mic drop moment. It's a really great read to properly sink your teeth into. Loved it. See, I can show you now, look, 4 yellow covers. What are the chances of that? This last one is not. This last one is blue. And also this is probably the real curveball. The Virgin Suicides was a charity shop find. This was also a charity shop find. This really called out to me from the shelf. And it's ended up becoming maybe one of my favourite books of all time. And it kind of really makes me believe in this slightly magical idea that books really do call out to you for one reason or another. Like, you might not even be aware of it, but at some time in the future, you'll need to escape into that story. Honestly, think that's what happened with this one. This is Firefly Lane. I mentioned earlier that I've been having a little bit of a tough time recently. Some things going on in our lives that are difficult to process, and this has been such a comfort to me, picking up this book over the past couple of weeks. But I think it's important to include a book like this, one that really touches your heart. And if you're looking for kind of like a gentle, soft, warm blanket of a comfort read, this one is all about kind of female friendship and love and growing up and being a woman. If you're looking for something a little bit like that at the moment, then maybe this can provide for you what it has done for me. I will preface this one by saying it has an extremely sad ending. If you are fragile at the moment, this might not be the one. If you just want to escape and fall in love with some wonderful characters, then go for it. Anyway, this is Firefly Lane. Let's start by saying, yes, this is now a Netflix series. I watched 1 episode. Having finished this book, I then, the same evening, went and started the TV show because I got so many Instagram messages about it. I'm not convinced by the TV show yet, but I think that's maybe because it's really jarring going straight from a book into an adaptation, and suddenly the characters that you've loved for like 2 weeks look very different and act very different. I will say, I think the book is better than the TV show, so let's put that out there. The Firefly Lane starts in the summers of the 70s when Kate is the absolute loner of 8th grade. She's super awkward, but then, as fate would have it, the coolest girl in the world moves in next door. And wouldn't you know, she wants to be friends, and Tully is the total opposite of Kate. Confident, she's stylish, she knows what she wants. They just couldn't be more different as teenage girls, and they have completely opposite family lives at the same time. They've grown up with very different mothers too. This book then spans 3 decades of their lives and friendship together. I think I mentioned earlier, oh, it's tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, that thing about the real kind of lifelong span of a long-term friendship. That is my jam in a book. I'm learning more and more that that is what I need. And this is the story of their friendship and how it remains as that real kind of one steadfast force that is there for both the girls through their childhoods, into their teens, into being young adults, all the way into full adulthood and motherhood and through their professions and all that kind of stuff. So as you might have guessed, and as I kind of warned you in advance, it's a really emotional one because we see how their lives play out over that huge timeline, how the decisions they make as teenagers and young women affects the trajectory of their entire lives going forwards, the things that they're kind of willing to shoot for or to compromise on, things that they come to regret. But then they are, of course, also simultaneously weathering the storms of long-term friendship, and you know, they hurt each other in the process. Kind of has the feeling to me of being a coming of age novel, but over and over and over. Because if you ask me, I feel like coming of age is a term that applies not just to one period of your life. I always feel a bit mad when I say this. To me, coming of age doesn't just happen once when you're 17 and you know, the summer you leave school. To me, that's not the only coming of age. I feel like coming of age happens once a decade, or like once every major change in your life when you change as a person, or maybe it even happens like once every time you reach a really big hurdle and you have to make a huge decision for yourself, or every time you make a massive mistake in your life and have to figure out how to rectify it. I don't know, I feel like the real coming of age moment in your life happens many, many times as you get older. And this book kind of is the epitome of that to me. I think it's a good sign, isn't it? If you feel like you can second guess the decisions that they're going to make, if you can kind of see what the characters are thinking before they say it out loud in the book, kind of means you know them really well. And I had that a lot. I simultaneously like adored them and wanted to protect them at all costs, and found myself like rolling my eyes and couldn't believe the terrible decisions that they were making for themselves, which is pretty accurate to real life, I guess. I loved the nostalgia for each of the decades. That was really magical to read. It's just proper like female friendship led magic, and that is what I'm all about. I felt such a connection to this story. I think it probably came to me at the right time, but I found it incredibly comforting. I'm very grateful to it. It's up there with my favourites ever now, I think. I have a notes on my phone of my favourite books ever, and it's going in the note, so that's when you know it's serious business. And I would say if you're looking for a book that feels like watching Gilmore Girls, maybe give this one a little try. Just another warning though, the ending is actually rude for how emotionally distressing it is, so tread lightly. And there we have it. We are officially at the midway point of this year. Can you actually believe that? Existential crisis incoming. I hope you found maybe 1 or 2 books to add to your TBR today. Hopefully there's a couple in there that sound like they might be up your street. But most importantly, I would absolutely love to hear in the comments what your favourite book of the year has been so far. I'm always looking for recommendations, and it feels good to be back. I really, really enjoyed. I've been chatting, honestly. These videos get edited down to like half an hour. I've been here for about 2.5 hours. This is what makes the final cut. Can you imagine what gets sliced out of these? Now I've got half a very soapy cold coffee to keep me company while I go and edit this. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you're well. Have a lovely rest of the day, whatever you're up to. And I will see you very soon with another video. Bye.